Our house of brands strategy is we're kind of taking those CPG best practices that we've all learned and also learning from the legacy industry of cannabis and kind of merging the best of both worlds and really building an optimal portfolio of brands.
Welcome to the Cannabis Packaged Goods podcast. My name is Cy Scott, CEO and co-founder of Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry. With this series, I'm covering the overlap between the emerging cannabis vertical and the consumer packaged goods business, highlighting the organizations that are pushing cannabis forward. In this podcast, we interview the people behind the brands that are being developed today, but may be with us for the decades to come. In today's episode, we'll be talking about the parent company, a vertically integrated omnichannel cannabis platform in California with a unique house of brands, a direct-to-consumer marketplace, and a social equity component. I have the privilege of interviewing Ann Peltz, EVP of Marketing, and Steve Winchell, EVP of Product Innovation, and learned a bit more about the parent company's strategy and its overlap with consumer packaged goods. It is a great conversation, and I had the opportunity to explore their vertical integration and how it combined with a house of brands really creates some unique advantages for them. I hope you enjoy the discussion. Well, really excited to be here with Steve Winchell and Ann Peltz of the parent company. Thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks for having us, I appreciate it.
So why don't we start by learning a bit about your backgrounds and what you were doing prior to the parent company?
Sure. So my background has always been science and research and development, right? So I'll take you all the way back and catch you up quickly. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in chemical engineering. And I've spent, the last 20 plus years in what we traditionally call, consumer packaged goods, traditional consumer packaged goods. So Unilever, SC Johnson, Clorox's of the world. And in my career to date, I've managed research and development, product innovation at these consumer packaged goods companies, which really incorporates sort of product development, packaging development, and then scaling up to manufacturing. With that, I joined what was at the time Caliva about 18 months ago, which is now obviously the parent company. And part of why I was interested in coming into sort of the cannabis space was I spent about 5 years where I managed the Burt's Bees R&D team. And when I worked with Burt's Bees, I really got to know and understand natural products. And we were doing a lot of testing of, synthetic personal care products versus natural personal care products. And I really got to see what the power of natural products can do, both scientifically and also for the consumer and their perspective on natural products. So to me, I got really interested in the extension of natural products and thinking of natural products for wellness and the whole being. And I saw what was happening in the cannabis industry. Was really excited to see sort of a new consumer packaged goods industry forming. And I saw a lot of opportunity to take those natural products from the cannabis plant and really apply those to consumers in their health and wellness routine. So that's kind of how I got interested in my background and how I ended up here.
Very cool. Yeah, Burt's Bees, I was just at a local pharmacy here in the Seattle area. There's a whole end cap of Burt's Bees, an incredible amount of SKUs on the shelves, associated with like the chapstick format, but the amazing amount of product diversity that you guys produced over there. And always exciting to see people coming from kind of more of the traditional CPG world into the cannabis world. I think it just helps accelerate all the success the industry's had so far.
I was going to say one thing to correct. I always have to do this. This is my old Burt's Bees day, Si. When you say chapstick, right, that's a product. It's lip balm. It's lip balm.
So yeah, I like Steve actually it was into chemistry and philosophy. That was my background in college, and was a bit of a lost soul. I was pre-med, going to be a doctor like my parents, and I realized I absolutely did not want to live my life in a hospital. And so I was a bit of a lost soul, as I say, and I ended up starting my career at E&G Gallo Winery just by happenstance, literally going into grocery stores every single day, dusting bottles, building display cases, thinking about how to merchandise wine so that consumers would come into the store and buy it. And so, kind of worked my way from the ground up at Gallo, and then got an opportunity to move to Modesto and go work in the marketing department at kind of very, bare bones, basic level, starting in marketing analytics, point of sale. And kind of 4 years in, I realized if I want to move forward in business, I absolutely should probably get like a business education. I had not taken one business course in my entire life. And so I ended up going back to business school and focused really kind of on general management and entrepreneurship with an eye on kind of maintaining my career focus within consumer packaged goods. And so I did do a brief stint at Shackley Corporation, which is a natural products, natural nutrition industry, but kind of a different model, like a direct selling model. So it kind of it really kind of honed my skills in terms of advocacy, marketing, really thinking through kind of loyalty and kind of thinking about how do you galvanize a group of consumers to not only purchase your product, but go out and sell it. So that was a tremendous opportunity for me. But I realized my heart was in wine, and to this day, I owe the Gallo family a lot, and I respect them wholeheartedly, and had the opportunity to go work on Barefoot Wine and Bubbly. So if you're familiar with the wine industry, an incredible brand, and it's really kind of, if you think about wine, you know, there was a lot of its focus on like terroir, and if you think about like kind of super premium wines, and it's definitely like CPG good, but Barefoot was this really kind of special and unique product in that at the time it really brought new users into the category. And so it was fun. It didn't take itself too seriously. If you think about the normal wine aisle, it's, you know, traditional vineyards, and Barefoot just disrupted the space with the foot on the label, fun colors, didn't take itself too seriously. And it was really kind of the first time I worked on a brand that was like really driven by that consumer insight. And so it was a fantastic opportunity for me to not only work within wine, but to build a brand that resonated with a whole new subset of consumers and really brought them into a category that they may have been unfamiliar with. And so at the time, it was like this Moscato craze, and so I worked on Barefoot for about 4 years, and then had the opportunity to go work in new business development in their spirits division for a bit. But then ultimately I had a kid, became a mom, and it got a little hard to commute to Modesto every day. Still in great relationship with the Gallo family, but took some time off and started a wine company because I still loved wine, but merged kind of that direct selling background I spoke about earlier in wine. And so really kind of, if you think about those occasions, it's all about getting together, really enjoying the moment. And there was an opportunity to kind of educate people about wine and do wine tastings. And so I had a great opportunity to do that. But then a friend of mine said, hey, I'm at Left Coast Ventures. We're pitching Mickey Hart in a couple of weeks, and we have no one in marketing. Can you think about a brand for Mickey Hart? So the next 3 weeks, I was kind of dove into cannabis and the dead and Mickey, and pitched Mickey Hart my first day on the job, and we were able to get Mickey Hart, and that's where we kind of launched Mind Your Head, and from there kind of the rest is history. Worked at Left Coast Ventures for a couple of years before we entered into the SPAC, and we've have since formed the parent company with Kaliva, Rock Nation, and Jay-Z.
Very cool, very cool. And so much of that background, I think, fits so nicely into the cannabis industry. I mean, the wine industry, the disruption from those brands you're talking about, and they're very notable brands. You know, I see them all the time at grocery and so on, and just they command so much shelf space. So I could see how that was quite disruptive and brought probably more people into the category, which is certainly what we want to do in the cannabis space. And the direct selling model, it's interesting as well, because I know the parent company has a direct-to-consumer model through Kaliva. And so, you know, making sure you're marketing directly to the consumer, getting products in the hands of the consumers directly through delivery, which is available in California, is great. So I think a lot of that skill set that you've developed over time will be very helpful over at the parent company. So exciting to see what you guys are going to be continuing to do. So speaking of the parent company, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the vision? I think everyone knows the headline, you know, and the Jay-Z association and all of that. But I think it's even bigger, if you can say that, even bigger than Jay-Z. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and you know, brands like Kaliva, for people that might not be familiar with Kaliva's retail footprint, and even their CPG footprint, the products that they're developing, and all the Left Coast brands, and how that vision came together.
Yeah, no, sure, and you queued it up beautifully, Sai. So really kind of. The parent company is the formation and the merging of Kaliva, Left Coast Ventures, and our partnership with Rock Nation and Jay-Z. And so as we kind of develop this new company, I mean, you have to remember we're only 100 days in, and we've already, I think, made some great progress since then. But really, our vision for the company is to architect and leave a new legacy, basically, by architecting a new blueprint for cannabis. And we think about this through three pillars. And so one being kind of our house of brands, so consumer goods. And as so many people talk about in the industry, it's like they say the future of cannabis is brands. And I think we're still kind of testing the waters with that. Some people are naysayers, maybe brand isn't it, and we see differences within categories, as where you have your edibles or beverages that are very much focused on less fragmented, and then you have your flower brands that it's heavily fragmented, and it's hard to find like kind of a consumer with a brand with majority share. But really, our house of brands strategy is we're kind of taking those CPG best practices that we've all learned, and also learning from the legacy industry of cannabis, and kind of merging the best of both worlds, and really building an optimal portfolio of brands that hopefully meet the need states of multiple consumers. And so that's one element of the parent company vision. And then the other is, to your point, what you were talking about earlier, is our D2C component, which is and really this omnichannel platform. So when we think about the consumer shopping experience, as you said, this is a nascent industry. Consumers attitudes and behaviors are changing on the daily, as we learned with the recent passing of bills. And so this is an opportunity for us to really think through, how do we build a consumer-centric approach to shopping? And it's not a channel-specific strategy, it's really a consumer-centric strategy. So how do we optimize that consumer journey, leveraging both bricks and mortar and e-commerce? And so kind of taking that path and figuring out what those influence points are, or friction points, and maybe smoothing those out. And so that is our ultimate vision for our omnichannel strategy. And I think there's a significant disruption that can happen in that space, because it is nascent, and we're learning every single day. And that's really shopper marketing and e-commerce. And then the third pillar for the parent company is around our social equity ventures. And so this is, I think, something that's really important to the parent company, Jay-Z, Rock Nation, and every single one of the employees at our company. We all are purpose-driven and mission-driven, and we firmly believe that we can't operate in a legal space unless we're doing something to rectify the harms of the war on drugs. And so I know we'll get into some of the monogram marketing, but if you look at kind of the hypocrisy drug campaigns that Jay kind of envisioned and executed, the Social Equity Ventures Fund is really our answer to that. And so we have a $10 million fund, and we'll be donating 2% of our annual profits towards this fund to invest in the future of cannabis entrepreneurs. And so it's not for profit. It really is our work and our mission to really kind of establish that new legacy in the cannabis industry.
I love that. I mean, social equity, it's something that's so important in the industry. And, you hear it from the federal level, with talk about changes federally, and a lot of what the Senate is looking at now are legalization measures that include that, right? That make sure that that's a big piece of it. From my own anecdotal, perspective, I got involved in the industry about 10 years ago, and it was early days, and very much, I got in because of the opportunity, kind of being a tech startup type individual. I thought, this is an emerging category. It looks like something that's growing. I'll jump in. And then once I'm in, it's like you learn so much about the harms of prohibition. And I don't know, if a lot of people think critically about that aren't so close to it like the industry. So organizations like the parent company that are doing things around social equity, I think will help, raise awareness, because that is a big piece. I mean, that's a fantastic, it's like what keeps me coming into work every day, right? Knowing that, we're doing something that can impact lives like directly with things like social equity programs built in. So when brands are doing that, I think that's fantastic. And we're seeing more and more of that, but I don't think we've seen enough quite yet, but I think it'll continue to progress. And everything else you said, the other couple pillars, House of Brands is great. And we'll talk about that, I think, in the next segment here. And D2C, for sure. I love that consumer-centric strategy. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's changing all the time. And, new consumers are coming in, Generation Z, which is over 10% of cannabis sales. And it's really only about 3 years of age, 21, 22, and 23-year-olds, maybe 24-year-olds at this point. And it's growing fast, right? And these are new consumers that have grown up with cannabis legal, ever since they were born. And if they're born in markets like California, it's been legal since the late 90s in the medical format. So really, great to see how that'll evolve. So speaking of brands, Steve, you want to tell me a little bit about the brand portfolio at the parent company?
Well, actually, I'm happy to do that, but I actually love for Ann to take that question. Sorry. Being our marketing lead, I think she could answer it definitely better than I can, but I'm happy to add, some commentary to it. And really quick, I do think, the conversation you guys having about, how do we think of the parent company vision, right? I do think it's really important, we're trying definitely to build, one of the most impactful cannabis companies in the world. And I think to Ann's point in the conversation you were having, Cy, it's really important to know that people who are benefiting from the legalization of cannabis, right, really do have a responsibility to kind of look back at the war of drugs and the social inequities and social injustices that have happened and take responsibility to try to help rectify some of those wrongs, right? I think that's really important. So I love the conversation you guys were having. I didn't feel there was anything to jump in or chime in on, but I think that's so important for the whole industry. And as companies come more and more into the space, I want to make sure everyone's putting that platform out there and really considering that, because I think that's a huge change and benefit for the industry.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, Ann, why don't you tell me a bit about the brand portfolio at the parent company?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Steve, feel free to jump in at any point in time. So as I mentioned, I come by way of Left Coast, and Steve is from Caliva, and we work lockstep, and so he's very familiar with the Caliva brands, and he's a great partner of mine in terms of developing brand strategy and the brand roadmap. So as I mentioned, we do employ a house of brand strategy, and so if you look at other consumer packaged, CPG companies like a Unilever or P&G. They have their big, umbrella brand, but then they have brands, consumer brands that do the heavy lifting and are consumer facing. And this works really well when you are marketing a category, kind of a similar product to multiple consumer segments. So versus like a Virgin Mobile or Virgin Airways, they're marketing different products, right? Entirely different products to the same set of consumers. And so we're marketing cannabis to multiple sets of consumers. To your point, like Gen Zs, I think after your latest report is the fastest cohort of growing consumers, but you still have the boomer and silent generation that have different needs. And so what appeals to that Gen Z consumer is not necessarily going to appeal to that silent generation consumer. And I mean, that seems totally obvious. And so, but that's why it's so important that you employ this house of brand strategies. And we lean really hard on the individual brands like Fun Uncle or Morayo by Santana or Mind Your Head to speak to a specific consumer. So while you're selling flower, and truth be told, there's differences between the flower that we sell, but generally speaking, it's one shampoo may have certain ingredients and the other shampoo have different ingredients, but the ingredients are are designed to appeal to that target consumer, but it's the same product category. So we're employing the same approach with the parent company. And so we have everything, luxury at the luxury end of the scale with Monogram to the very kind of value-driven product like a deli. So deli, it averages for about $20 an eighth. We even pulse it down to $17 an eighth. We just had to sell a really good price over here in California. And that really is our value line, appealing to kind of that everyday consumption. You don't need to think too hard. You're going to get consistent quality every time, and you're going to get pretty good weed for the price. Whereas, on the other end of the spectrum, you have Monogram, and so much artisan, and craftsmanship go into everything about that product, from the packaging to the product and the cannabis itself. So the OG, 1.5 gram hand roll, for example, the flower that we grow for that goes through an entirely different process than what we do for like a deli. And so, everything from the bud size to how we go about curing it, it's just a very high touch process that really informs the product of that flower that ends up in the OG hand roll. And then when you get to the actual production of the OG hand roll, they do you'll see D break up the flower into little sized pearls, uses rolling paper and wraps it up, and it's individually rolled, and it's not through cones, and that creates a really unique and luxurious smoking experience. And so we run the gamut in terms of pricing, and then we're also launching a line called Well this summer that really is designed for kind of the health and wellness side of things. And so you look at different product formats that appeal to that specific consumer. And so we currently have 8 brands within our portfolio that we're pushing, and we're looking to grow that base of brands based on the consumer research we're doing and identifying those kind of white space opportunities.
Yeah, and I think when you think of our brand portfolio side, it's really important, right? We want a brand, and even within the brand, the individual products themselves, right, have some level of separation and difference between them, but we want a brand and product that speaks to every consumer. So whether it's their first time using cannabis, whether it's their 100th time purchasing cannabis, whether they want high THC, low THC, high price point, low price point, the form factor of use, whether it's ingestion inhalables. We're definitely trying to leverage our house of brands to really focus on those consumer needs and how do we address those consumer needs.
And I will say the good news is we're vertically integrated, so we can control much of that process in terms of product formulations and everything to distribution and getting a product to the consumer, that we're able to kind of control that consumer journey and really kind of map that portfolio out to optimize who we're targeting.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And a great point around like your new brand you're introducing well and kind of a wellness approach. We find that older consumers definitely have different preferences. You see more tinctures, more topicals, which can most likely be attributed to wellness type products. So yeah, having that full spectrum all the way from deli to monogram and beyond, I could see how you just capture the consumer, any type of consumer, wherever they're at kind of in their cannabis consumption journey. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, speaking of brands, Fun Uncle is one of your brands, and I think it's been a Caliva brand for some time. And recently you guys announced Fun Uncle Cruisers, which are a vapor pen cartridge product. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I wrote a little bit about it, particularly, things around the price point targeting. I thought it was, pretty clever to come in with a low price cartridge. So I'm curious, what did product development look like for a product like that? Was it, starting with the price point? Was it starting with your audience? Was it a little bit of both? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I would say the product development approach sort of came as a two-pronged approach, right? And the way to think of it is the first approach was a little bit sort of top-down. So as we started forming the parent company, we started looking at all the different capabilities we bring to the table with the individual companies, right? So with Sisu, we bring a great capability in oil and oil extraction. And so how do we think about leveraging that now with the brand portfolio we have, right? With the manufacturing, the vertical integration we have with Caliva. And so that was sort of the first part. Like, how do we take everything we're doing as a parent company and from an integration standpoint and really build on that scale? And then to your point, Sai, I think the second thing was we started looking at, what are the different market opportunities? I think, we're always looking at competitive products, portfolio gaps we have, consumer trends that are happening, and the consumer needs and what needs are not being met. And I think we saw that, vape is obviously, the second largest category in California right now. And we see where a lot of the growth is coming from. And we saw that there's a big gap in the vape portfolio. And really that gap is across the entire state. While there are some smaller players, some brands starting to play in that space, there's no big brand. There's no, brand that's kind of come in and said, hey, there's an opportunity for a low cost quality vape that's readily available to all consumers. There are, again, sort of small pockets where you could get some low-cost vapes, but it's very limited where the distribution is, where the access is, and what the brand is. So we kind of took it from both approaches, that there's this consumer need, as well as there's integrated capabilities that we can leverage for innovation. I think the bringing of those two ideas together is really where it came from. And from the consumer needs standpoint, we definitely saw that COVID and what's happened to the economy has really impacted a lot of our consumers. A lot of people have been financially impacted, continue to be financially impacted, and we still think there's a long road to recovery there as we continue to come out of this. So we definitely felt that being able to leverage our scale, leverage our integrated capabilities to bring the cost down on a needed product in the market was a way to bring innovation to the forefront. So that was kind of how we approached the development on Fun Uncle Cruisers.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think there certainly is a lot of white space in the category. In California in particular, it's the number 2 best-selling categories, vapor pens, by dollar sales right now. And a younger audience seems to be, attracted to that format as well. And often, younger audience has less purchasing power. Even, pre-pandemic, just kind of getting started, they don't have, as much money to spend. The share of wallet going to cannabis versus there are other things that they may be interested in. So I really think it's clever to come in with a low price point cartridge because you're going to bring more people to the category, and they can come in, they'll get used to it, they'll start purchasing it, and that could turn into brand loyalty and they stick around for Fun Uncle. And I know Fun Uncle also produces other types of products like flower based products and so on. So, if VaporPen brings them in, then great opportunity to expand. Or if they're already in because of Fun Uncle flower, then they can jump into VaporPens and it's not such a barrier. I think the average price per single gram cartridge is, $50 to $60 in California pre-tax. And so when you have something introduced at, is it $25? Yeah, that's a striking discount compared to average, right? So I think that certainly will make waves, and then it's really around the scale and distribution, and that's what I think is so interesting about the Caliva aspect of the parent company and kind of having the retail footprint and the D2C that we were talking about. You guys are going to be able to get this in front of a lot of people, and for those that aren't in California, I mean, it's a big state, everyone knows that, but it's also a very fragmented state, right? And so getting distribution at scale is challenging for a lot of operators, and I think if you have some of those advantages, that'll pay dividends. For marketing and awareness, one of the things, Anne, that made some headlines the last week or so was the Monogram photo shoot. I thought that was really cool stuff, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But also, how do you think about, brands like Funnel Cruisers within the brand portfolio? Do you give them all the same amount of attention? Do you have strategies for all of them, or is it more the premium brands that you're really leaning into because of things like price point or audience? I would love to hear kind of your take on all of that.
Yeah, I'll start with Monogram because I think that's probably top of mind for everyone. And I want to give credit where credit is due. It's definitely, we have fabulous partners over at Rock Nation, and obviously with the vision of Jay-Z, this brand has kind of taken on a whole new level. And it's really kind of what we think is redefining how we look at cannabis, right? And what that cannabis life means is bringing dignity back to cannabis. And so Alex Miller over at Rock Nation has really kind of spearheaded the Monogram brand from that standpoint. And I think, we obviously, the campaign that exposed the hypocrisy of the war on drugs that hit in March was a big one. And that was really Jay's statement of saying, like, this is something we acknowledge. And it was kind of a pathway into what we're doing at Social Equity Ventures Fund. And then the Slim Aarons campaign, kind of the Good Life Redefined, I thought, it's like, I saw it and I was blown away by just how well and beautifully done that was executed. So Hype Williams was the photographer on that shoot, and they leveraged talent like Chica and Currency. And the idea was just to show that, like, cannabis has permission to be in these spaces that we wouldn't normally think of, but also, the good life. It's not like it was in the 50s too. It's diverse, and we see a lot of that, and cannabis can be a part of that good life instead of, it's taking the place of champagne in those visuals. And so I'm really proud of the team and what they were able to accomplish there. It obviously, I think it's award winning, and I think most people will definitely remember that campaign moving forward. With respect to how we kind of just on a very pragmatic level with how we manage brands internally is, we've taken kind of best-in-class CPG practices, and we have brand managers. So our brand managers are tasked with owning not only kind of the financial health of the brand, but also the brand equity, so the brand health and all the attributes of what do consumers think about our brands, what is that perception. And so a lot of that is driven by marketing, and we take kind of like a channel type approach. So D2C, obviously, but being one of our significant channels, but also our wholesale channel, and thinking through what are those levers that we're going to pull to continue to drive sales. So kind of more of your push marketing tactics. How do we partner with dispensaries to ensure that they have the proper tools that they need? We're going to be testing a few campaigns for like bud tender training to make sure, like for Funnel Cruisers, we're going to be piloting a program in May to get in front of bud tenders so that they have like the top 3 talking points on Funnel Cruisers, because they're selling, hundreds of SKUs, and sometimes it's really difficult to remember those salient key talking points to tell consumers and help guide that decision-making process. And so kind of really these push marketing tactics, thinking within the 4 walls of the retailer and influencing gatekeepers in that capacity. And then those pull marketing activities, so kind of like brand pillar campaigns that resonate with consumers, so that when they go into dispensaries, they hopefully, right, the holy grail is that they're like, hey, I want that Funnel Cruisers. Do you guys carry it? And if they don't carry it, hopefully that dispensary will bring it in. And so, so those are some of the tactics we'll be looking to deploy throughout the year to ensure that we can kind of work from both angles to do kind of the push marketing activities, which is so important in cannabis. I think trade marketing is one of the most important levers in this business. And then obviously on the consumer side, what can we do to resonate with our intended target consumer? So in terms of prioritization, we have to place priorities on things, or else we will not be effective. And so, we're still candidly working through some of that, but it is looking for the kind of the significant opportunities that are going to continue to drive revenue for the company. while also serving our consumers.
The monogram campaign. I mean, one of the interesting things about the cannabis industry, many interesting things, but one of many, I should say, is the challenges around marketing. And traditional marketing, that organizations may have access to from what everyone knows with like Facebook and with Google AdWords and so on is so limited in the cannabis category. So you really have to be creative to generate waves. And I think what was so interesting about that monogram campaign, the recent one here, is that I saw a lot of media press pickup, right? And there's a lot happening in the space, so it's hard to kind of cut through the noise. But I think when you do programs like that really stand out, that really kind of have a clear vision, I guess, of what they're trying to accomplish, I think it is quite notable. And the amount of media attention I saw from that was fantastic. And you saw a lot of that early on in things like the early days of California legalization, and then kind of seemed to taper off a little bit. But it's great to see a lot of that coming back. And in the New York, the hypocrisy kind of campaign, couldn't have timed that any better, given New York legalization and everything coming up. So that was really cool to see. So yeah, looking forward. And you're spot on. I think that seems to be the right approach with brands like Fun Uncle, working directly with the retailers. Bud tenders have so much influence over the consumer, right? Even myself, who's, been in the space a long time, there's so many new products, so many new brands, you go in and it's very consultative still. Like, tell me what's new, what's good, what do you like? What do people seem to be buying? Why do they seem to be buying it? A lot of those questions, and it's a one-on-one interaction. And so the more, bud tenders are aware of your products and the benefits of the products, I see that as a real obvious strategy for a brand like Fun Uncle.
I think to your point, Si, the insights from bud tenders is actually it's unbelievable what you can gain from them, right? And so actually taking some time, something we do is take some time and spend the day with a bud tender, right? And listen to what they're talking about, listen to what they're selling, listen to what the consumer's questions are. But one of the beautiful elements of being vertically integrated is the insights we have from our sales internally, right? From our dispensaries and our D2C and delivery channel, as well as obviously the insights we get from our bud tenders. Gives us a whole different perspective on how to think about connecting with our consumers and what our consumer needs are and what need states they're coming in and asking for. And I think that's just another benefit of being vertically integrated, is that bud tender insight, because it's to your point, it's huge, and it is very consultant like, right? Where someone's coming in and like, hey, there's so much, this worked for me last time, this didn't work for me, what do you recommend? And that's a very powerful position for a bud tender or a wellness consultant actually to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's great, the kind of exposure that you guys get directly to that kind of feedback. And I think, every brand should be thinking like this these days, even if they're not vertically integrated. It's getting access to good data. And of course, I'm biased, being here at Headset, and this is what we do. But for sure, that's the questions you need to be asking. And if you can ask your own team, right, because they're doing retail and they're interacting with those consumers, then you have a direct relationship with the consumer through the direct-to-consumer model that you guys have. It's a lot of good consumer inputs to help drive, where you're going. And I think that's, like any CPG company, I think would love to have that kind of relationship with the consumer. Often CPG is at a disadvantage to the retailer, because the retailer owns the consumer relationships in a lot of ways. And, it's harder to get those insights out directly. It's very rare when you see that, and you see retailers producing, their own brands, private label brands, taking advantage of that information, right? But only sold at their own retailers, which is, interesting when you talked about strategy and about not only are you guys selling it through your own retail channels, you're doing wholesale to other dispensaries in California. So able to leverage the insights you get internally and then, bring that to the products and then bring that out to the full market. So it's great, like full circle. And I think traditional CPG would be desperately jealous of that kind of ability.
Yeah, with my background in traditional CPG, it's a whole new world I have access to here, right? I'm so used to you're working with a buyer that represents, a Target or a Walmart, and you're sort of separated from the consumer a little bit. And so the fact that we don't have that separation here is great. And again, it really allows us to focus insights, product, claims, the whole unmet need, like directly on the consumer. And that's the thing I love about consumer packaged goods, right? Is focusing on the consumer and how do you help and benefit the consumer. So it's a very different world.
Totally. Well, thanks so much, Ann and Steve, for joining the Cannabis Packaged Goods podcast. Really appreciate all your time, all your insights into the parent company, and very much looking forward to seeing what's next, whether it's the new Well brand and even what's beyond that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it. It was good talking.